In this video, we're going to learn about inheritance in TypeScript. So TypeScript supports the object-oriented concept of inheritance. So it defines common properties and methods in the superclass. The subclasses can extend the superclass and add properties and methods. And there's also support for abstract classes and overriding. But one thing that's important here is that TypeScript only supports single inheritance. However, you can implement multiple interfaces. Alrighty, so let's look at an inheritance example. So we'll have a shape that has X and Y for the location, getter, setter, accessors, and then also a getInfo method. And then we'll have subclasses here. So a circle, it adds an additional property here, radius. Again, it's getter, setter, accessors. And then also it can override the getInfo method, basically a string representation of the given item. And we can do a similar thing here on the right-hand side with rectangle. We can add two properties here, width and length, the getter setters, and also overriding the getInfo method accordingly. And we'll see some examples of this with real code. All right, so let's look at the code here for our shape class. So we have a constructor that has private X and Y. These are our parameter properties. Remember, it defines and assigns them at the same time. So this getInfo method returns X equals this.X and Y equals this.Y. So just a nice string representation for this given shape. And then we'll go ahead and set up our circle. So our circle extends shape. So the extends keyword is for inheritance. We define our constructor. So at the top, we have regular parameters, the X and Y. And then we also have a parameter property underscore radius. And then we call the superclass constructor and we pass in those regular parameters, X and Y. And so then we'll have this getInfo method that we override from the superclass. So here for this example, I have return super.getInfo. So I call the superclass version of this method. And then I add on my specific information, radius equals this underscore radius. Alrighty, so now let's go ahead and pull it all together by creating a main application. So just as a recap, there's our shape class and also our circle class. And so here in our driver, we do our imports accordingly. And then we create a new shape, passing the XY 10, 15, and we do a console log on my shape. And then a similar thing here for circles. So XY radius, and then we do a console.log on my circle. And so when we run this application, this is our given output. So the first line here is for displaying the shape, and then the second line is for displaying the circle. And notice how it makes use of the overwritten version of the getInfo method for that given circle. Alrighty, so let's extend our example a bit more here and let's create the rectangle subclass. So rectangle extends shape. We have our constructor. So our constructor makes use of two regular parameters, the X and the Y, and then also two parameter properties for the width and the length for this given rectangle. And then we also call the superclass constructor by doing super, the X, comma, the Y. And then we override the getInfo method to give our own specific implementation here. So here I say return super.getInfo, so I call that superclass method. And then I add on the specific information for this given subclass. So I have width equals this underscore width and length equals this underscore length. And that's basically it for rectangle. All right, so let's go ahead and add support for the rectangle in our main application. So here's our code from before. So then I go ahead and create my rectangle equals new rectangle. I pass in the X, Y, width, length. And then I do a console.log on my rectangle.getInfo. So then once we run this application, here's the output. So the first line is for my shape, then my circle, and then my rectangle. And again, notice how it's using the overridden version of the getInfo methods for my circle and my rectangle. Okay, so let's go ahead and create an array of shapes. So we have 3 shapes right now: my shape, my circle, my rectangle. So I'll declare an array for the shapes, and it's going to be initially empty. So I'll say the shapes : shape with square brackets equals empty square brackets. So it's an empty array right now, but it can only hold shapes and shape subclasses. All right, so now I'll go ahead and add the shapes to the array here. So I'll say the shapes.push my shape, and I'll do a similar thing for my circle and my rectangle. So we're simply adding things to the array. And so then I'll set up a for loop here. I'll say let temp shape of the shapes, and I'll do a console.log temp shape.getInfo. And so here's the output here. So we get the info for my shape, then my circle, and then finally my rectangle. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and move into our IDE and let's test out this coding.